Hey, what's all this then? This isn't Horizon Zero Dawn. Well, yes, I understand that you guys did vote for Horizon. It's gonna take a little while to get that video ready. You guys may not know this, but whenever I do a sustaining mediocrity video on a game, I replay it, just to refresh my memory. That being said, I've got a long ways to go before I can get that video out to you. So in the meantime, let's sidestep a little bit and talk about the last Spider-Man game from the Insomniac franchise that I still have yet to cover, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, I did a review of this game nearly 5 years ago when I was playing the PS4 version. Since then, I have acquired a PS5 and played that version of the game, and it's that one that we'll be talking about here today. As usual, when I talk about something that I have an overall positive opinion on, we will split this up into pros and cons regarding both the story and the gameplay. And let's see if we can't get out of here in under 30 minutes. Before we begin though, I'd like to inform you that this video is brought to you by my Patreon. More on that later on. Let's tackle the story first, as that's where I have the least to say one way or the other. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little disappointed by the fact that despite costing a whopping $50, only $10 less than its predecessor, it has not even a quarter of the content. The story could be completed in about 5 hours, and when I first played it in 2020, I finished the whole thing in one afternoon despite having to actually go to GameStop physically to pick it up that same day. But regardless, let's do the recap. The story being told in this game is a very personal one that begins with Peter and Miles having to babysit Rhino as he's being transferred back to the Raft prison. Along the way though, he escapes and tears to the city, putting Peter out of commission and leaving Miles to take him down with his newfound bioelectric powers before meeting Simon Krieger, the CEO of Roxxon, a transformative energy company. When the dust settles, we find out that Peter is going out of town for a few weeks, leaving Miles to protect New York himself and giving him a new suit. At the same time, Miles discovers a new tech-based group of eco-terrorists called the Underground, and his best friend Finn Mason comes by to visit for the holidays. Miles begins to reconnect with Finn, but things seem wrong. However, she won't open up to him about what's bothering her. Incidentally, the Underground spring an attack on Miles' mother's rally before ambushing a convoy that is transporting Roxxon's new energy source, Nuform, so that they can steal it for an unknown reason. Miles shows up to stop them, where he finds out that Finn is the Tinkerer, the leader of this group, just before disaster strikes. His venom powers react with the new form, destabilizing it and causing a cataclysmic explosion of the bridge. Even though Miles manages to save the day, Roxxon brands him as a terrorist as well, giving him a new faction of enemies to deal with. As Miles investigates to try to understand Finn's motivations, he discovers that his uncle Aaron is the Prowler, a thief who used to be active in New York City many years ago. He also learns that Finn's older brother Rick was killed as a result of having worked on Nuform for Roxxon. The pieces then come together as we discover that Finn plans to utilize the unstable Nuform that we created to sabotage the new reactor Roxxon plans to use to power all of Harlem, causing their entire plaza to be destroyed as payback for her brother. We later learn, though, that Krieger knew all about this plan and has adjusted the reactor such that it would destroy the entirety of Harlem, and he can blame it on the Underground. From there, Miles does everything he can to talk Finn down and get her to see reason, but she doesn't until it's too late and it costs her everything, including her life. Through all of it though, even the missteps and the mistakes, Miles has come into his own as Spider-Man and has learned to accept that with great power does come great responsibility. Being a shorter story, I figured I could kind of get away with recapping almost the entire thing, so let's talk about the positives. First and foremost, I really appreciate that the story is just about Spider-Man saving the city from a threat. I know that people have begun to associate Miles Morales with the multiverse, and that may lead people to have the idea that he needs to have these higher responsibilities, and that stories regarding him need to be grander in scale, when in reality, most people would rather have a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man than watch him save the whole universe, so in a way, it's rather refreshing. To that point, I also appreciate that the side missions are almost entirely dedicated to helping and becoming friends with the people in the neighborhood. Ordinarily, I wouldn't include optional content here, but there's not much content to begin with, so cut me some slack. You become friends with the guy from the bodega, the local barber, and other people who feel real, people that feel like a part of the actual community that Spider-Man protects. And in turn, they protect him at the end of the story, even after learning who he really is. It's like that moment from the Spider-Man 2 movie where everyone on the train sees Peter's face and they decide to defend him against Dr. Octopus. I feel that Spider-Man and themes of unity with the people of New York kind of go hand in hand now. Something that's sorely missing from the Tom Holland trilogy, but we'll talk about that another day. Another thing that I love about this story is that it's so distinctly Spider-Man. While you're not playing as Peter at all in this game, it's still such an inherently Spider-Man thing to watch him have to make these impossible choices when it turns out that the enemy he's fighting against is actually someone he cares deeply about, when his own uncle stands in his way and leaves him with no other choice than to fight. The last thing Miles wants to have to do is hurt Finn, one of the people he loves the absolute most in the entire world. But by the same token, he can't stand by and let her jeopardize everyone else he loves for the sake of her own vindication. It harkens back to the last game where Peter is put in a very similar situation by having to fight his mentor. While I'm not necessarily someone who believes that Spider-Man is at his best when he's utterly miserable, I do think that this is the perfect scenario to put him in for the debut of his solo career. I truly think that they make the most of their short runtime here. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxiboyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. As for what I don't like about this story, the list isn't too terribly long and it's hard to highlight anything in particular as a true negative without feeling like I'm nitpicking for the sake of having something to say. I could point out that the reason for Peter leaving town seems kinda lazy and like a cheap continuation of the story from the DLC from the last game, but I don't really feel that way. In fact, I praised that in my initial review way back then. I could say that it's unfortunate that every single character in the game knows that Miles is Spider-Man by the time it's over, but part of me prefers not having to deal with that same old secret identity melodrama that we've seen 1,000 times before. If I'm being completely honest, I feel like this game having such a short runtime eliminates the potential for things to feel drawn out or contrived or otherwise grind my gears. If I had to really lock down one thing that I couldn't stand, it's the way that Finn acts after learning that Miles is Spider-Man. Despite watching him get his ass beat by the Rhino and tortured by Roxxon guards, she thinks that he sold her out for some reason. She's unwilling to even entertain the possibility that Miles might be telling her the truth about New Form. For her to not be the bad guy here, she sure acts like it. She's willing to hurt or even threaten to kill or maybe even kill anyone she needs to in order to get what she wants. But the story never pauses to reflect on how she's become the very thing that she hated. She only comes to her senses when she sees that Miles is at risk of dying the same way that her brother did, and she decides to protect him, sacrificing her life. It just feels unearned. Like, maybe if the game had been 30 minutes longer, it could have had the time it needed to develop that plotline organically, but as it is, it's just a little rushed, and that's really all I got. Now let's talk about gameplay. Right off the bat, until Spider-Man 2 came out, this was my favorite one to hop into and play. Admittedly, I'm a little spoiled to the speed and mechanics of that game, and so coming back to this one had my hands just a little confused. That's no fault of this game, though. Swinging through the city, however, Miles just brings so much energy and exuberance that Peter doesn't have. It's clear to the player that Miles, being so early into his Spider-Man career, is still enjoying it so much, and it just has this residual effect on you as you play. Miles also has 2 new powers that Peter doesn't, one of which being his Venom Blasts. You can utilize some of these Venom techniques as you swing to increase your maneuverability and your movement speed. You can also refill your Venom gauge by doing tricks in the air, which creates sort of a feedback loop. that is incredibly satisfying to play. This even trickles down into combat, as you have 5 different venom-based attacks that you can use in different ways to vary your approach in much the same way that the web gadgets did in the previous games. I also strongly prefer Miles' finishers, but that's just me. I would also like to highlight the stealth mechanics in the game. Last time around, the only scenarios in which you could utilize stealth was when you were taking down one of the 4 different types of bases in the city. Even then, you would lose your element of surprise automatically when the second wave began. This would happen no matter what, forcing you into open combat for the next 10 minutes or so. Here though, the waves are gone. We still have bases, but all of the enemies are there from the very beginning. Using the environment and your invisibility, you can remain in stealth until the encounter is over. You never have to engage in open combat if you don't want to, and if you can manage to avoid making any mistakes. I greatly prefer this system, and I'm sure that my Batman Arkham fans out there do too. Maybe I'll cover the rest of those games one day if you want me to. As far as drawbacks in this game's core gameplay, I would say that I miss Peter's old gadgets. It could be said that Miles having 2 extra powers makes up the difference, but I disagree. Miles' gadgets simply don't come close to being as fun as Peter's. I don't even understand how his hollow drones work, and the gravity well is only useful if you use it in tandem with the Venom Strike. It's virtually ineffective on its own, and the remote mine is only effective when you stick it to a junction box and wait for the enemies to come close. This, of course, means that it's most useful when it's in stealth, but it also means that it is the only gadget that is useful in stealth. It just leaves a bit to be desired, especially knowing that it seems like the trip mines and the impact webbing and things like that will never be back. Beyond that, all of these games kind of fall into this place where it seems like you have a checklist of things to collect and random challenges to do just for the sake of achieving 100% completion. A lot of it is just so tedious, like trying to rebuild Uncle Aaron's trash beats. I feel like I forced myself to do it because I want the platinum, maybe just because I know it's easy, or maybe it's because I like Spider-Man so much, but I get the feeling that if it were a different game, I highly doubt that I would have been going around the city clicking R3 to look for a box with a thing in it that I can use to make a costume. You know what I mean? That's whatever, I guess. For many people, though, the question remains, which game is the best? That's difficult because I think each game does different things really well. And what this game does well is truly imparting the experience of being Spider-Man onto the player. Of course, that whole thing was a meme back in 2018 when the game first came out, but this one in particular creates the most authentic feeling of being a kid given spider powers and what that would feel like. For that reason, this game will probably stand out to me and have a special place in my heart for a long time. Is it the best? No, but it's not the worst either. I will say though, that if you do like Insomniac Miles, it's probably only because of this game. To say that he's at his best here is an understatement. This is the only game where he doesn't get on my nerves. In my opinion, I think that the best thing Insomniac and Marvel can do moving forward is to continue making separate games about Miles where he doesn't have to share the spotlight with Peter. It's the only way to give him the attention and the respect that he deserves as his own hero. We'll see what happens though. In the meantime, feel free to nominate another game in the future for me to do one of these videos on, and in a perfect world, we'll get to it one day or another. Until then, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.